about the year 1999-2000, somewhere in the transition between those 2 years, Kenneth E. Hagin called a special meeting at Tulsa, Oklahoma. He called Kenneth Copeland. He called other of the prosperity preachers that were primarily focusing on the prosperity message or aspect of faith with regard to prosperity for finances and material prosperity. And he called a special meeting. Some of the ones that I know were there: Kenneth Copeland, as I mentioned, Jerry Savelle, Jesse Duplantis, Creflo Dollar, who is one of the ministers, one of the 6 televangelists, along with Kenneth Copeland and the Senator Grassley Senate Finance Committee and televangelist investigation. Mac Hammond, several others. One person that was invited who did not show up and decided not to go was Leroy Thompson out of Darrow, Louisiana, who's well known for his Money Cometh message. He was one that had been summoned to that meeting and said God told him not to go. Interesting thing, I heard that Mac Hammond called him and said, "Leroy, why aren't you coming?" He said, "God told me not to come." So that's interesting. God told me to call you and tell you you're supposed to be there. One of us has got a problem. Well, Leroy Thompson didn't show up, but Mac Hammond did. And another person was there privy at that meeting, and that was my senior pastor. Kenneth Hagin called this meeting. That's why I'm privy to what happened in there. And he sat them all down and he said, "Now listen, I called y'all to meet with me because I have written a book." And he held up, I don't know if it looked exactly like this at the time, but he held up this book. It's called The Midas Touch. The subtitle is A Balanced Approach to Biblical Prosperity. Let me repeat that. A Balanced Approach to Biblical Prosperity by Kenneth E. Hagin. He said to them, to these ministers, "I've written this book, and because there are some excesses and error that has been spreading amongst the prosperity, amongst the Word of Faith circles with regard to the teaching of prosperity that you present have all been guilty of, and I want to address those with you personally prior to the book coming out, to give you a chance to make adjustments in your own teaching, your own lives, your own ministries, so that there be no division amongst our group and our circles in the Word of Faith movement." And he proceeded to explain areas of their teaching that they had gotten to error. Now, this is probably a surprise to many of you. When I've mentioned this to people, they were really surprised that Kenneth E. Hagin actually lovingly corrected Kenneth Copeland, Creflo Dollar, and a bunch of these other ministers that I've already named for getting off balance and what he said into a ditch with regard to their teaching. And Kenneth E. Hagin was here in this meeting correcting Kenneth Copeland, correcting Creflo Dollar and these other ministers with regard to excesses. He told them excesses and extreme teachings of prosperity that were unbiblical and had gotten into the ditch with regard to the message. Anybody watching this video who has attended any of Kenneth Copeland's meetings, watched his broadcasts consistently at all, even going through his tapes and books, lists and everything, but especially in the most recent years, this is 2008 that we're taping this, October 2008, you will have probably noticed that the subject of material prosperity and material abundance is the leading subject that he deals with. In fact, there is an expression in the Word of Faith circles, which Kenneth Hagin apparently is addressing here, fake it till you make it. This is among Word of Faith preachers. People were actually encouraged, not by the Kenneth E. Hagin, and not openly by any of the other ministers, but because of the emphasis in material possessions and the constant, talking about how, we built a new ministry building, even bigger, a bigger house. I got a big giant house. believe for a jet, got a jet. Oh, I believe for a Mercedes, got a Mercedes. Oh, I got a Bentley or whatever. These crazy things they're getting into because of the constant. They're always dressed in very expensive suits, gold watches, gold this, gold that, diamonds, you name it. Because of that type of emphasis, younger ministers coming up in the ranks were actually running up credit card debt and other debt to look prosperous, as the expression goes, to fake it until they make it. What were they doing? Wanting to look prosperous so they get more preaching doors and bigger offerings, and once they've been and pay off the credit cards, I guess, later. Brothers and sisters, that's ungodly. That is ungodly. That's a sin. And Kenneth Hagin called Kenneth Copeland and Creflo Dollar and others on the carpet, so to speak, in a loving way. He was not a very boisterous or rebuking kind of person. So in a very loving way, though, called him on the carpet over this and published a book to hold him accountable well beyond after he left this earth. Listen to what Kenneth E. Hagin said. In teaching prosperity, too many preachers seem to communicate the idea that receiving financial abundance is totally and exclusively tied to one thing, giving, and usually to them. Well, brothers and sisters, right today, at this time, Kenneth Copeland has been going through, since November of 2007, a really tough time in the media, in the public opinion, amongst the body of Christ, because of a Senate Finance Committee investigation, an inquiry really, being led by Senator Charles Grassley, with regard to their lavish, ostentatious lifestyle, with regard to the Citation 10 jet, and the news reports that broke on that drew Senator Grassley's attention to that topic, the 18,000 square foot home, the expensive hunting trips on exotic game ranges, and all these things. If you've looked at the media stuff, and I've got a bunch of that on this blog site so you can review it, Kenneth E. Hagin brought direct correction and reproof and instruction to Kenneth Copeland, to Creflo Dollar, and all the other ministers I listed before, saying they had gotten into excess, they had gotten into error, they had gone into the ditch, and they needed to